Keeper of the Lost City's Everblaze, Chapter 34. "What's wrong?" someone shouted as Sophie jerked backwards, shivering and flailing in someone's icy grip. It took her a second to realize it was Fitz. "He was waiting for me," she whispered, glancing behind her, expecting Finton to spring up and attack. He was still unconscious on the floor. "I don't understand." Sophie tried to pull away from Fitz, but her legs weren't ready. "You're safe," Fitz promised. "He's not even awake." "But he should be. I brought him back, and it was like he'd been waiting for me. He told me everyone was going to pay." "Are you sure it wasn't a memory?" Tiergan asked, moving to Finton's side. He lifted one of Finton's arms and dropped it, letting it fall to the floor with an icy crunch. "He hasn't moved this whole time," Kenrick added. "I was watching him closely, and nothing changed until you started screaming. And I felt only the slightest shift in his mood," Orly added quietly. Tiergan closed his eyes and reached for Finton's temples, and ripped his hand away as fast as he could. "I can see his memories piecing themselves back together," he told them, shaking his head hard. "But his mind is very overwhelmed." "How so?" Alden asked, reaching for Finton's temples. Tiergan grabbed his hand to stop him. "I would not recommend it, especially given your past experiences." Alden looked torn for a second, then slowly he dropped his hands to his side. "Well, his mind was devastatingly shattered in the break. Perhaps it is taking longer for him to recover." "Then why was he able to threaten me?" Sophie asked. Tiergan lifted Finton's eyelids before he answered, "I'm not sure if that was really him. You said he seemed very prepared for the memory break before you performed it, right?" Alden and Sophie both nodded. "Well, then perhaps he built in certain defense mechanisms, and you inadvertently triggered one?" "Then it's safe to search his memories?" Sophie asked, cursing herself for falling for a cheap trick. "I'm not sure safe is the right word," Alden said, running his hands through his hair. "Perhaps we should give it a bit more time." "But what if that was his plan?" Sophie argued. "What if he left that message to frighten me away so that he'd have time to destroy important memories?" "I don't know if a mind truly works that way," Kenrick said, taking Alden's place at Finton's side. "But let's see." He pressed his fingers against Finton's forehead, gritting his teeth and sucking in sharp breaths until he finally stumbled back. "Wow," he whispered, wiping his sweaty brow on his sleeve. "His mind is a maze. I can't." He groaned and rubbed his temples. Orly rushed to his side, tracing one soft finger across the crease puckered in his brow. "Thanks," he whispered, sighing as he pressed his face into her palm. "You always make everything better." Orly smiled, gently cradling his head, before they both seemed to realize they weren't alone. "Sorry," Kenrick mumbled, clearing his throat. He straightened up as he told them, "I've never entered a mind so twisted before, and I don't know how you lasted so long in there, Sophie." "It wasn't fun," she admitted, though she hadn't noticed the mind was a maze. Had it shifted since she'd been in there? "I have to go back in," she decided, moving towards Finton. "Not without me," Fitz insisted. "He's healed now, right?" "I don't know that he is," Tiergan admitted. "You saw how he affected Kenrick." "Yes, but Kenrick's a big softy," Counselor Tarek teased. "Every time we take a vote, we can count on Kenrick to vote for mercy. That's why I'm everyone's favorite. Well, second favorite. Empaths always win." Orly blushed. "I'm sure I can handle it," Fitz insisted. "And I applaud your bravery, son," Eldon told him. "I also understand your urgency, Sophie, but haste is never a wise course." "Neither is wasting time and overthinking things," Sophie argued. "If it helps, I'm not picking up any potential for danger," Counselor Tarek offered. "Actually, I find that more upsetting," Alden told him. "So do I," Tiergan agreed. "Me too," Kenrick added. "Are you doubting my abilities?" Counselor Tarek's tone was light, but there was a definite edge of annoyance. Orly made her way over to Finton, tracing her fingertips across his forehead. "He's feeling everything and nothing all at once. Surely that could be confusing you were just crying." "Perhaps," Counselor Tarek reluctantly agreed. Doesn't matter, Sophie jumped in. We all knew this was going to be dangerous. I still have to try. I think you mean we, Fitz corrected. We have to try. Sophie sighed. Fitz. Who thinks Sophie should go back into the crazy mind maze without a guide? Fitz interrupted, looking around to see if anyone would raise their hand. Alden looked the most tempted, though Counselor Tarek was a surprisingly close second, but no one did. If something happens, Sophie tried. What if something happens to you? Fitz argued. I can't sit here uselessly anymore. You trust me, don't you? I do, but you either trust me or you don't. She really wished there was a secret answer number 3 that would keep Fitz safe. But she knew he was right, and she probably was going to need him. Get ready, she told him. We're going in. Okay, this is way creepier than I thought it would be, Fitz admitted, trying to keep up as Sophie raced through the web of eerie, flashing memories. Kenrick had definitely been right about Fenton's mind being a maze. Every turn they made only led to more paths of blaring, mismatched scenes, flickering like living objects. And Sophie quickly lost all track of which way was up or down, or where they were supposed to be. Is this how it was last time with my dad? Fitz asked, as they backtracked from yet another dead end. It was still overwhelming, but not so calculated. During Fenton's memory break, his mind had been a raging river, flooding too fast for her to make sense of most of what she saw. But the maze was slow and deliberate, as if Fenton, however conscious he was specifically choosing what he would and wouldn't let them see. He was stalling them, buying himself time, and Sophie didn't want to be there when he was finally ready to face them. Do you think Everblaze would help? Fitz asked. Why would I want to? Her transmission stopped when she realized Fitz meant their code word. I don't think it would. A brain push needed to have a reason or a direction, but the thought did give her another idea. I'm going to try something we never made up code word for, she transmitted. Great, because that's not terrifying. Sorry. She'd totally overlooked her inflicting ability when they made up their list, and she was starting to think emotion might be the key. Every memory would be linked to both thoughts and feelings. So, if she could inflict the right emotion into Fenton's mind, it might lead them to all the related memories attached to the same emotion. She had no idea if it was actually possible, but it was the only plan she could think of. She replayed the partial memory she had recovered the last time, focusing on the way Fenton had looked as he watched his unknown, unregistered prodigy call down Everblaze from the sky. His lips were curled with a smile, but not a happy smile. A proud smile. You ready? She transmitted to Fitz. I guess. Let's hope this turns out to be Alden. She was thinking the same thing, though she felt many reasons to worry. Still, she focused on the day she'd found out she passed her level 2 midterms, after struggling so hard with some of the tests. A warm rush of pride blossomed inside her head, and she coddled it, nurtured it, fed it bits of other proud moments, until she'd built up enough force to blast it out of her mind. What on earth is that? Fitz asked, as the warmth rushed past them, swirling through the maze of images and turning them a new path. Sophie chased the warm trail, weaving and dipping and climbing and dropping until they reached a row of images that seemed almost connected. A younger, kinder Fenton bowed and accepted his counselor's crown. A somewhat older, more serious Fenton stopped the firestorm that erupted in a volcano and saved a large family of Apatoruses. A mishmash of smiling people he'd helped, both humans and elves. Glimpses of places he'd visited and struggles he'd braved. He used to be a good person, Sophie thought quietly. But this was all before pyrokinesis was banned, Fitz reminded her. He was right. In fact, most of the scenes looked ancient, and many of them involved fire, but there was a distinct lack of glowing neon yellow. Do you see any Everblaze? Sophie transmitted, wondering if her eyes were missing something. Everblaze, or code word Everblaze? Fitz asked. Everblaze, Sophie clarified, wishing she'd picked a less confusing code word. I don't see any in these memories. Do you? No, he thought after a second. Is that bad? It just doesn't make any sense. The way Fenton had talked about Everblaze when she'd met him, it was like he was talking about his deepest love, his greatest creation. But his creation had killed 5 of his friends and gotten his ability banned. I think we're looking in the wrong place. Maybe she'd gotten mushy after seeing all the good things Fenton had done. But she couldn't help wonder if the memory that they needed was tucked away with Fenton's regrets. Sophie tried to remember moments when she'd felt that kind of shame. She'd tripped or fallen or humiliated herself thousands of different ways, and of course there were numerous medical disasters. The Great Cape destruction had also been pretty epic, but none of those kind of regrets and remorse were like the time she'd cheated on her alchemy midterm. She drew on her shame and sadness, mixed with a dash of guilt and embarrassment, and let it stew and simmer until she felt like she was back in Dame Elina's office, facing the consequences of her actions. The feeling was equal parts hot and cold, and Sophie let herself drown in it until the force was strong enough to blast it out of her mind. She raced through the trail it blazed, spiraling down and down some more, until the light was gone, and all that was left was her and Fitz, and a wall of fragmented memories. Many, blazing with unstoppable flames. "You'll never find what you're looking for," Fenton's mind shouted. But Sophie knew he was too late. Malamelt, she told Fitz, using the code word to stop him from retreating away. She'd definitely found something good. In fact, she'd found the exact memory they needed. Please, 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 Sophie thought as she watched the familiar scene replay. The memory started earlier this time, and she stared through Fenton's eyes as he stood behind an elf in long red robes and pointed up to the sky, to one star that seemed to burn brighter than the others. "Turn around," Sophie begged as the elf murmured something to the stars. She couldn't understand the words, but she knew that voice, the hollow, empty tone that had been etched into her brain the day her kidnappers had dragged her out in a drugged haze and burned her wrists for not answering his question. This was it, the clue she'd been waiting for. All she needed was for him to turn around and show his face. Turn around, turn around, turn around! The figure stretched his palm towards the sky, curling his fingers, still whispering something Sophie couldn't understand. Turn around, turn around, turn around! Instead, the memory sputtered to a halt, like Fenton had hit pause. "No, you don't," Sophie transmitted, focusing harder, trying to push through whatever barrier Fenton had just made. His mind fought back, and no matter how many times she lunged for the memory, Fenton kept shoving her away. "Everblaze," Sophie warned Fitz, concentrating on the humming energy in the back of her mind and blasting it at the guarded memory. The brain push broke through, whirling the scene back to life, but it was blurry now. She could barely make out the pale skin and dark hair, not enough to identify him. But hopefully another brain push would clear the rest of the fog. The memory sped up as Sophie tried to focus on the energy left in her head, and by the time she called Everblaze again, the scene had skipped to the moment neon yellow flames erupted, burning wilder than the last time she'd watched the memory. Not just a ball of flame, an inferno. "And so we begin," Fenton told her, as she pushed at the memory from every side, trying to catch a different view of her kidnapper's face through the smoke. "Everblaze," Fitz transmitted, but Sophie had nothing left to give. Her mind was too drained, and she could barely think through the heat and the blinding flames that seemed to be consuming the memory from outside in. "His identity dies with me," Fenton told her. "Everblaze, Everblaze, Everblaze," Fitz screamed. It was only then he added Verminion to the mix when she realized he might not be using the code word. She pulled her mind free, dragging Fitz in her wake, and opened her eyes to the nightmare he'd been trying to save her from. Bright yellow sparks raining from the ceiling, merging with flames that were no longer just in her mind. An unstoppable wall of Everblaze.